I won't name names, but there were a few situations in that world of things. Sometimes they, especially at that era, they don't like paying people, and they also don't like crediting you for some reason. And so when I figured out you didn't have to have people on your beats, I was like, oh, let me just do this.
You used to live in London, right?
There was a brief period, yeah. I tried last year. It was great. I have no complaints, except for I'm from Miami, and maybe I would say it's almost the exact opposite of Miami in a lot of ways. In the weather way was kind of what broke me, but I love it. I love London. It's always great to come.
Hell yeah. Obviously, Florida runs deep in your music and in everything you do. What's your relationship to like the rap scene there? Because I remember reading an interview where you talked about how you used to you started out making beats for rappers in Florida.
I mean, in the era that I was just starting to make music, it started exploding from, I would say like there was obviously like the DJ Khaled era when I was super young, that I was still kind of making beats and stuff. But when I really started working with people, it was like Space Ghost Perp, Raider Clan, Denzel Curry, Rob Banks, and all of that. So it was a special time. I'd say like 2013 to 2016, maybe 2017.
And were you working with any of those artists directly, or was it sort of
Rob Banks and Denzel Curry, when they were doing stuff, we were all just kind of in the mix. Miami's quite small in a lot of ways, and you just go out and you meet somebody, and like all of a sudden you're in this studio, and everybody was just really excited to make music at that time, and there were less rules about what to do. So I feel like it was a sick moment to be a part of.
That's so interesting because I associate you so heavily with like almost a different part of SoundCloud now.
Yeah.
But like that's really the SoundCloud
that's
you grew
like
up on?
the deep, exactly. No, it's funny. I mean, in that time too, I was making, I guess, what would be considered more like the music that I make now, but just keeping it a bit more secret. But Denzel's people, for example, I showed them some stuff and they were like, oh, this is good. And they were like really into Flying Lotus at that time, and I feel like that was kind of closer to what I was doing too. So I was like, all right, you can make beats and it doesn't necessarily have to have people on them.
Yeah. At what point did you start moving from that world into like more of the club scene and ambient and things like that?
I won't name names, but there were a few situations in that world of things. Sometimes they, especially at that era, they don't like paying people, and they also don't like crediting you for some reason. And so when I figured out you didn't have to have people on your beats, I was like, oh, let me just do this. But I also really enjoyed DJing and getting, in that era there were parties where it was like performances, DJs, art show, whatever, all kind of mixed in. And I feel like once I realized you could once I was old enough to start going to clubs and stuff like this too, it was just, felt like a natural progression.
Yeah, I also think a lot about how, the rap music of Florida is very dance oriented. And, there was the whole like,
there's bounce.
The jukin like movement, I don't know if you've seen like this Kid Cudi song, Maui Wowie's like having a moment
I'm
now.
So High by Grind Mode. That was like the song. Like that song, there's a song called Be Ma by this guy, DJ Chipman. To me, that's like religious for me. Like it was like middle school era, and the beats were always like these spacey, almost emotional kind of beats, but very like sticking and bopping. So you could still do like, it was danceable. And I think that just got embedded in like my DNA from an early age.
For sure.
Definitely.
So you go from that into like this more club, ambient space. You also have a little pop era in the middle of that. Can you just talk a little about your time working with Rosalia?
Yeah. Shout out to Rosalia.
Album dropping tomorrow, I guess?
Yeah, that's exciting. No, I mean, it was basically, what's interesting about that one was I was working with this label Nafi out of Mexico City. And I put out this EP with them called Aguacero that was kind of like this more percussion. It was really influenced by this genre tribal from Mexico, and she had been listening to a lot of the Nafi stuff, and I think through that discovered a few of the artists working on the label. Like she did stuff with Tejana as well, and I just one day got a DM on Instagram and we started talking. I went to LA for a couple of days. I was in the studio with her, Noah Goldstein and Dylan Wiggins, who are all like incredible producers and artists.
Noah Goldstein worked on like the Kanye music, right?
Yeah, he did a lot of the Kanye stuff, a lot of the Frank stuff. you know, the context of getting in there was from still doing my weird electronic stuff, but then she's obviously like this pop master, but also really into the avant-garde or whatever, just like finding all these things that are in that are going on in the music world, in the underground music world. Yeah, I like worked on a few songs, tried some things out. It was a really, I think, definitive experience for me because it's kind of like you just get dropped in the middle of the ocean and you just got to figure it out.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, I could have done a better job, but also I think because of that experience, I definitely pushed myself more to be like, oh, you can be in these spaces. And I do want to be in these spaces.
Yeah.
And I feel like working with her too, I learned so much about just like what it means to craft an album and like care about the entire context of the thing and not just like, every song has to have this and like these 4 things in it. It's like, no, what if this moment happens here and then later on there's this and like, yeah, just building a full project.
Yeah. Was it a bit of that pop vibe where like, you know, you work on something with the artist and you're just like not sure if that's gonna make the final version? It's kind of like this machine almost.
No, she's super hands-on.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
that was like, it was so cool, honestly. It was like, there were a couple of different people in different rooms doing stuff all at the same time. And then we would just kind of check in with each other every couple of hours. And yeah, it was cool. Yeah, it was a very like fun experience, I would say.
And while you were doing that, were you still finding time to DJ and like sort of stay tapped into that world?
It was right after COVID that this happened.
Okay.
So the DJing thing was a little slower, I would say. But when the actual album Motomami came out, I had just started touring like super heavily. So they kind of happened at the same time, parallel, I guess, which was interesting because, I wanted to be in sessions and doing this stuff, but then all of a sudden it's like, oh, do you want to go to Europe for 3 months and play? And I'm like, yeah.
Well, how is like working with a pop star informed your sensibilities as a solo artist?
I will say, like, when I was working on my album that came out this year, I was finding myself thinking about those few days that I was in the studio with her because just kind of the approach to an album and being a little more minimalist and letting things breathe. Because I feel like when we were working on stuff, I would be like, okay, every song obviously needs like a really good sub bass or something. It's like, actually, no, like this, I have enough of that over here. Like this one, I want it more stripped back. It's like, oh, right. Yeah. Like I should be thinking about it like this. So I think more on the taking stuff out and giving everything space and a moment to breathe is something that I really love about good pop music. Yeah. And especially when you can introduce like, I don't know, more experimental textures or something like this. Yeah, and I was doing sessions with other people, you know, like working with Erica de Cassier or like Empress of, and I've always loved the pop world. I think I coming into like the rap stuff, it was always just about being in the studio with people and like collaborating and trying to realize other people's vision that I like. And then my music was always kind of just like a little secret thing where I go hide and like try things out. Yeah. And then they started to meet in the middle a bit more. I kept them quite separated for a while, and I feel like after my experience with Rose, it was like, oh, well, I should, you know, try to make these work together a bit more. Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about your album real quick. I mean, I think this is like one of the best club records of the year. It feels like a pop record to me at times too. It's like
club record is interesting.
Yeah. I was like, how would you categorize it?
I would call it more pop. I would say like electronica. I don't know. There's more vocals, obviously. There's like, the structure of the songs maybe are less focused on like DJ ability. Yeah. There's not too many on there that I would personally play outside of the context of like a live show or something like that. Yeah, I don't know. I think I was going for that. I knew it wasn't going to be pop like purely, but that was the goal. And I know that like my favorite thing to do is just to, like try and do something that I know it's not going to land exactly where I'm thinking, but it'll still be interesting because I tried to go there. Does that make sense? Yeah,
totally. You mentioned Erica earlier, and I was just thinking about, you know, so we're making, Pitchfork's making like our year-end list now, our albums list and songs list and all that, and like it had me thinking about how like a handful of the best albums in the year kind of share a similar vibe. Like they're almost, well, you guys literally work together. I'm talking about, you know, you, Erica, OK Lou,
James
K, literally, like, you know, there's even Malibu, you know, there's such a like interesting like thing happening where so many of the coolest and most like acclaimed albums in the year kind of share this like kind of like sincerity to them, I would say, or
yeah,
like
I was
just
using
like
that word, yeah, for sure.
yeah, and like just like this sonic, like this almost like aqueous sound. I don't know if that's something you've been thinking about. Like,
Yeah, I mean, aqueous always, because
Yeah.
Miami and
Yeah.
humidity, it's just like a part
Yeah.
of the thing. But I agree, or just, I don't know, it feels like a lot of us are pulling from a similar place maybe, and like, especially with electronic music, I think of like SoundCloud era of just finding random like edits of whatever song slowed down, or like an emo version of this thing, or like just kind of we're at this point now where the influences and everything is so mixed up that it really just kind of it becomes personal in the way that you experienced music as what your formative years are like later on, when you were like actually really committed to being interested in music. I feel like, yeah, there's so much to pull from, and the best filtration system is just your own personal experience.
for sure.
And I think maybe we have shared experiences in that way. But
Yeah.
it's been really sick I think this is one of the best years for music in recent history, for sure.
Definitely. Yeah, we were talking before this just about the Los Tanaka album.
Yeah.
Crazy. Like,
Gonna see them later, yeah.
yeah, we're about to see them. Yeah, literally. That's like one of those albums where I feel like it can like potentially reconfigure how you listen to music.
For sure. And what's interesting too is it's the same SoundCloud, like DJ E, Elysia Crampton, before she was Chukri Mamani, Condori, like all of this stuff, it's like similar eras of this like early, I wouldn't even miss like maybe 2010, early 2010s, I guess. But it was just lawless, but people still loved pop, if that makes sense. Like it was people doing experimental stuff, but still loved like whatever, Rihanna or something, and you're just kind of mixing them together. And I think that is so, I love that. Like that's the most interesting thing. And now it's been long enough to where it's actually happening within the context of pop, where you have like Beyonce working with Kelman Duran or something. You know what I mean? Like that's fire.
Yeah.
more of that. Jeez.
That just makes me want to ask, like, do you want to get back into those rooms? Like, I think you had mentioned you do, but like, is there any artists in the pop world right now you like really want to work with?
I mean, I love working with Erica. She's the best. Definitely, yeah. There's a few people that I've been in the studio with over the last summer. I've been trying to convince people to just come to Miami and hang out and like work on stuff there, because I think it's a pretty good place to write. I've quite enjoyed touring and doing my album and everything like that, but I always kind of wind back and forth between collaborating with other people, and then when I always learn new things. So whenever you learn that stuff and you can just like apply it to the next thing, or pushes you in a new direction.
Yeah, you just put out, I don't know if you just put it out, I don't know. Pretty recently put out like a remixes album for Tropical Entropy.
Yeah.
And then I was just wondering, like, is this sort of the cap on this era of the album, or you think you're gonna do more with it?
I think so. I mean, I'm gonna do live performances. I've been playing like this month I'm touring in Europe doing the live show, and I'm gonna definitely push that a bit more next year. I'm very much in the mode of like ready to write more stuff, because what was cool about this album was it was like I wanted a way to summarize all of the things I do, because I feel quite scattered, and we're talking about SoundCloud rap and club and ambient, all this stuff, and I was like, how am I gonna put it together? And the album was kind of that challenge for me. I was like, let me just make the statement in that way, like, hey, this is what I do. And I feel like since I've done that, I feel a bit more freedom to just keep doing more of that. Like I have songs with my own vocals on the album. I'll do more of that. Maybe I'll do some more club music at some point that's like purely functional.
Yeah.
But it's been really, I just like songwriting now, or like learning instruments a bit more, this kind of thing.
I would love for DJ Frisco, Florida Fast DJ.
Yeah.
I'd love for him to remix your album. That was like my selfish, like, is this gonna happen?
Yeah, he did a fast version of Bikini, but Bikini is already pretty fast, so it just kind of sounds like nightcore. I don't know. It was really sick actually. But that like fast music, this kind of whole culture of Florida stuff, was really influential for this record, and just like in general, where it's like a lot of that music, what I was saying before, is like emotional in the melody, but then the beat, it can be almost silly sometimes, and the beat's always kind of like, it makes you move, and then you just speed it up even more to where like the vocals are almost like chipmunky or like manipulated in this way. And sometimes it does sound like somebody like OK Lou or whoever, where it's like the voice is them, but it's just slightly more alien because they've shifted it.
I'll never forget, I saw OK Lou DJ last year at like a roller rink, and she played this like Pierre Bourne edit that like pitched up his vocals, and I was like,
Yeah.
damn, it just sounds like Okay Lou.
Yeah,
It's
it's
crazy.
like all, I'm just really interested in those coincidences or like moments where these things kind of line up and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, we're all doing similar things, just maybe approaching it from a different angle or something.
For sure. Does anybody have any questions?
What song do you think of yours do you think represents your inner world best, and why?
Easy answer is Bikini, 100%. Maybe subconsciously, or I don't know how. It was a really magical song, the way it all came together. It was like collaborative with me, Erica, and my friend Sammy. We all met at the same time. I worked on the beat with Sammy. It got sent to Erica. It all came together. And I feel like the collaborative part is definitely a part of like the essence of what I like to do. But musically, it has all of the things that I feel I try to express with music, where it's like it makes you move, but there's also like, maybe it's kind of sad, maybe it's not, maybe there's like a bit, there's like, there's melancholy there, or melancholy maybe is a better word, but like there's like some trance, you know, sprinkled in, not too much, but just enough. The drums, I feel like it's just like a good, it feels very Miami 2008 Ultra, but like in a parallel universe. Like Afrojack liked the song, you know what I mean? Like, which was, to me, it's like, okay, cool. Like this, we're getting somewhere. But yeah, I would say maybe that one for sure.
My favorite song off the album was Ghost Orchid with Ella Minus, but I don't speak Spanish. Could you tell us what that song is about?
Basically, the title, it comes from this movie adaptation. I don't know if you've ever seen it with Nicolas Cage. And I was trying to sprinkle in like Easter eggs of Florida lore, and that movie's that takes place in Everglades. And they're looking for this ghost orchid. And I really wanted, when we talked about it, I was like, I kind of pictured this ASMR type voice happening when the beat fades out, and it's just kind of like aqueous or like wet sounding sounds, and just somebody talking about
This makes me want to ask a quick follow-up to that, which is, do you have like any films or film soundtracks in general that have informed your music a lot over the years?
I don't know if soundtracks, but films 100%. Like, that's how I think about music, I think if I, had another life or time to dedicate to a different craft, it would totally be that. I mean, I love film music. All like the Johnny Greenwood stuff for Paul Thomas Anderson is great. I like synthier stuff that like Trent Reznor does. I like the guy who did all the music for Tarkovsky. Like the Stalker movie has really great music. OPN, I guess, is like the biggest one for sure. His stuff is great as well.
So you mentioned earlier that when you were working with rappers, a lot of that had to do with kind of the sounds that they were gravitated towards, and then working with pop artists has been a bit different, but it kind of sounds like working with other artists, kind of regardless of genre, has so much to do with their inner world and what they're gravitating towards. And of course, like your own taste and your own style informs so much of that. Mm-hmm. But I was so interested earlier when you were talking about your own music, and in the beginning it was kind of the secret thing you were doing on your own. How did you develop your own style divorced from the style of the other artists that you were working with? Like, regardless of whether they were rappers or pop stars, like how did you kind of
I mean, this has been like the task at hand, let's call it, It's been, I feel like when I started making music, it was very much just like, this is the thing that I'm gonna do, and I'm just gonna do it and be in service to others in this way. But you learn being in those situations, and if people like what you do, they let you in, and you start to figure out why they like what you do, or what they like about what you do. And then I feel like when I say hide away, it would just be more like experimenting on my own, so that maybe I could come and bring something to the picture. Because I always felt like there were things that I appreciated about straight up rap or straight up pop music, but for whatever reason, I just couldn't do. And for a while, it was frustrating, but when I kind of flipped it in the sense of like, okay, well, maybe that's what people like. How can you bring this to the table and see like where it meshes? That's also why I like collaborating in that way, because then you have, like, if I'm by myself, I'm just gonna try it all and get stuck in my head about it. If you're with somebody that's like, hey, I don't know, and you're like, you're right, let's do this instead, or like, you know what I mean? There's more of like a a boundary there or like guardrails to not get too far off track when in that way. I feel like I've always just been into rhythm and percussion and this kind of thing. Like even in the early like rap beats or like other things I would do, I was listening to stuff and I was like, oh no, it's still, before I even like knew what I was, like maybe the specific genre name or something, I was interested in kind of bouncier, broken rhythms and like, yeah, they both inform each other, I guess I would say. Because like now it's definitely, I've always loved the pop stuff, but I guess it didn't really start to show until recently in my own work. If that makes sense, yeah. Yeah, it's a good question.
I think that's it. Thanks so much, Nick.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thanks.